Hey guys, Omni here. We are finally able to continue with Legends of Tomorrow, which is returned this week. So I just finished watching this episode just a little bit ago, and I'm going to go ahead and dive into and give you guys my thoughts. If you haven't seen the episode, be sure to tune out and come back once you have, because I will be spoiling some stuff, because I'm going to talk about pretty much everything of note that happened in this episode. So the episode itself starts off with this mysterious figure tracking down Charlie's old band, and we learn that this is one of her sisters, one of the other Fates. And I'm going to go ahead and say this now. I can't remember her name, and I can't remember the other sister's name, so it's going to be Old Sister and Murder Sister is what I'm calling these two. I need to go back and actually turn these subtitles on so I can actually get their names in check, but for right now, that's what we're going with. Anyway, she's there looking for Charlie, and because they don't have answers, she slaughters everybody there. News reaches the Wave Rider, and Charlie is, of course, distraught and, lamenting about how everything is going to be. Her sisters are not going to let her go now that they know that the loom of fate is intact. Well, not intact, but all of its pieces are on this earth now, so they're beginning their quest to try to find it as well. Not really giving Astra any moments to grieve. John is still pressing that they need to go and find the loom. And even when they're like, dude, give it a second, all of her friends just died, chill for a minute. And he doesn't. He goes off on his own and tracks one of the pieces down to Vancouver, British Columbia, where all of this is actually filmed. And what is hilarious is that the location ends up being on what is an area of BC, which is restricted off for filming for Supernatural. So we don't have a straight Sam and Dean crossover. We don't actually have them appearing in this. Really, we just see the car, some set pieces that you would typically see in a Supernatural episode, just kind of pop their little heads up here throughout the episode. They make some quips about it a little bit because, once they realize John has gone off on his own, Sarah and Charlie end up reluctantly going after him to make sure he's safe and that they actually get this piece of the loom. Now that they are aware that Charlie's sisters are actively hunting these pieces as well, now that they're trying to find Charlie, we also learned that Murder Sister was the fate that decided when people died, which is convenient because she seems very, very happy stabbing people. While all this is going on, Zari is starting to have more echoes from the past timeline with her previous self. We've been seeing a little bits of it here and out throughout the episode, but it's more apparent here. Her cravings for donuts, sleepwalks into Nate's bedroom and sleeps there. She sees a cat roaming the halls of the Wave Rider, which only she can see, and she somehow, in her frustrations, Bayrod tries to help her relax with some video games, manages to completely kick his butt, and this version of Zari's never played a video game. And she's like, I don't even know how this came through, blah, blah, blah. And then she gets even more worked up. She grabs his arm and somehow activates the wind totem and shoots a gust of air at the TV. So all of these things are just thrown at us at once with this. And Bayrod pretty much gets together with Nate and tries to explain all of this together with her about her past life, what happened at Hayworld and how it's affecting everything. And now it's those echoes of that previous timeline and existence are starting to show themselves in her subconscious. In order to try to remedy this further, Bayrod comes up with the idea to give Zari a bunch of his drugs so that she can get in the right state of mind to commune with the amulet. And she managed to pull this off and comes across old Zari, who is, even despite being erased from the timeline, is still being held within the totem as one of the previous totem bearers. So she's still there at her consciousness, a remnant of her is there, and they meet and they reflect upon each other. And it's really interesting how they play it off. Just, how this snooty version of Zari grew up in this life, in this way, all prim, proper, and taken care of, while the other one, lost her entire family, fought in this dystopian future, and saved the world multiple times. And these two differing realities, you really see how, these realizations come through for both of these versions of the same person. And, despite all that, new Zari is feeling, inadequate because she's not all of these things that her old self used to be. Meanwhile, old Zari is actually very content with this new version of Zari, because she grew up without any of that pain, she has this realization that because of her non-existence in this timeline, what they did at Hayworld, her family and her brother are alive and happy right now. And she concedes to just existing in the totem, obviously longing to be out there in some sort of way, but still more holding it up that everybody's she knows and has cared about is alive again and safe, which is really touching, and I really liked how they handled that. There's also another side plot with Mick and Ava trying to repair his relationship with his daughter. So they have this idea that they can just time jump through her life in key moments to make sure that he was actually there for her. Kind of like what Rip did for Ava to program her memories, during her cloning process. But this all backfires because not only does that work for the longest haul, when his daughter gets older, she now resents him for always leaving and disappearing after these key moments, not really sticking around ever, but always like she would turn around, walk away, and come back after this like event that made her happy, and he would just be gone and nothing from him. And knowing that he got out of prison 5 years ago and still he had never really been around, and it just backfires. So there's going to be a whole other approach to that later down the road. As Murder Sister is hunting them down, she reaches Old Sister, who is the one that's mentoring and manipulating Astra at this point, as I kind of guessed. That, she was, points her towards John Constantine, gives her his coin so that she can track John, because John will lead her to Charlie. Follows them to BC, and she's already killed all of the staff that was there filming for this supernatural shoot, and they rise as zombies. There's this action that breaks out. They actually confront Murder Sister for a hot minute, and they all get the buns kicked. And John, in his amazing self, comes together with all of his supernatural abilities to try to hold her off in the moment of nobility, while he's like, I'm not backing down, you all escape. I can't do accents. Anyway, they escape. John catches back up to him, but it's just Murder Sister disguised as John. John is actually back there bleeding out by a ravine, and they go along their merry way looking for the ring that houses the loom fragment that they're after. Once they come across it, Murder Sister outs herself and takes them out. She even she even blames that all of mankind's treachery and atrocities and all these things going on in the world right now on the fact that Charlie broke the loom and allowed mankind to have free will in the first place, even though she's like, people need to have the right to choose, not be decided by us, who are we or whatever. And she's like, look what this has led to. And really just puts it all on her there before impaling her into a log. And then Sarah tries to fight her off, but fails as well. And then she reveals her godly self to her, which is Charlie had established before. Their true form is just fatal to be witnessed, heard, or seen by mortals. And she reveals herself, just starts glowing, and it's presumed that Sarah dies from it. After she gets the ring and starts to leave, Charlie taunts her and is like, well, you may have one, but you'll never find the other ones. But the Wave Rider appears to answer their distress call. The ring is already resonating with another piece nearby, which is the other ring that is currently on the Wave Rider. So she hijacks the Wave Rider. And this is while Zari's still on her little vision quest, and Bayrod's the only one on there at the moment. So he goes to try to wake up Zari so that he can get her out of there, but Bayrod's unable to actually get her out of there because he's unable to wake her up out of her trance, and Murder Sister corners them both. Murder Sister threatens to kill Zari if he doesn't let her leave with it. So he, of course, chooses Zari and lets her start to leave with it, but he goes after the Hell Sword that they got from Genghis Khan while she's got her back turned and tries to make a go at it, but she catches his arm, pulls out his life thread, and cuts it, kills him. And she says this little line, it's like, you're not supposed to be here. And then follows that up with a line about how he can't avoid fate any longer. Of course, referencing the original timeline where he had been dead. And he's been alive now in this current timeline because of their own meddling. After Murder Sister kills Bayrod and starts making her way off the Wave Rider, Sarah actually wakes up, and because I guess at this point, I think it's fair to assume that her relationship with death, with the totems, with everything we've learned up to this point, she may just be immune to death at this point. I don't know. That's the best scenario and theory that I have for that whole situation, but they don't really call any attention to it just yet. I think that might be something they explain a little bit later, but she makes her way back to the Wave Rider just in time to cut off Murder's sister before she can escape with both of the rings. And she picks up the Hell Sword and goes after her and starts fighting her. She even gets a nick in and gets a stab in on her, but because she's a deity, I guess, she's immune to it, erasing her from existence. So she beats down Sarah, but thankfully Gideon steps in and while they're in the time stream, pops open the door to the outside hatch and she starts getting sucked by the vacuum of space, but she grabs onto Sarah. Thankfully, also, Charlie comes in and picks up the Hell Sword, chops off her hand, and she goes flying off into the void. So they managed to get away for the moment, getting the rings back off of her hand, and that's it. Zari finally wakes up and is like, man, this session, this trance, this meditation that I had with my previous self, this recollection, this coming to terms of who I was, who I am and stuff is all great. Just to be met by Nate and gang with their somber faces and Bayrod's body in the background behind them, ruining her. With this great little montage of her just kind of mourning and moping over it until she finally realizes that John might actually be able to save Bayrod if they find the loom. And she even blames John for this whole situation they're in, the danger that Bayrod is put in because of what he did, this connection to the loom. But she comes at him with the fire and the fury of old Zari and comes at him with the strength she definitely didn't have before, but basically gives him an ultimatum that when they find the loom, he will bring Bayrod back. So I'm curious how that's going to pan out, because Bayrod's existence and his, just like Murder Sister said, he was not meant to be alive. He was only alive because of their meddling with the timelines. And I'm curious at how that's going to play off and pay off in the remainder of the series. Are they going to bring Bayrod back? If Zari steps back into her old role, and are they going to share the totem? I mean, there's this little moment back when Nate, Bayrod, and Zari are all talking about the past time stream that they don't realize in this moment that Bayrod was actually dead in the previous timeline. They're like, how did we both use the wind totem? Maybe we used it together. Wonder Twins! And we got a cool little Wonder Twins reference that I really enjoyed. But overall, I dug the episode. I liked the kind of meta humor that was going on with them stepping onto the supernatural set. I'm mildly disappointed we didn't get to see Sam and Dean or anything like that. They did keep bringing them up, and Sarah even mentioning that, I forget which one, but one of them is on her hall pass. Overall, it was a good episode, and I like this. This is another example of what Legends can somehow get away with compared to the other shows, with some of the brutality that they actually show in this, some of the more mature themes. I don't understand how this show gets away with things the other shows are not. So much blood, so much the occult, so much sex, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of stuff, man, that the other shows never really reference. I mean, there's not always a place for it, but there's sometimes some scenes where you're just like, it's kind of scaled back a little bit, even on Arrow with some of the fight scenes, the gore, the action, the things that obviously would be a lot more bloody than they aren't. But then you go over to Legends and there's just pools of blood everywhere. Somebody with just completely impaled through with like a staff or whatever. I don't know. I'm still curious how they get away with it. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to really add about this episode. I just really enjoyed it. I like that Zari's finally transitioning or starting to transition out of this influencer version of herself that has just been getting on my nerves for so long. Mixed storyline. I liked a little bit of it. I'm not too sure about it. Some of the B plots I'm not all that fond of, but I'm glad that they're giving all the other characters something to do. Nate definitely feel like he was kind of on the wayside in this episode, but John, as always, is my favorite. I don't care what bad he does, what he does wrong. I just love watching Matt Ryan in this role. So he's still the pinnacle of this show to me. So I want to know your guys' thoughts. What did you guys think of this episode of Legends of Tomorrow, our return into the show after its hiatus? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll carry on that conversation after the video. Thank you all for tuning in, but I'll catch you guys next time in the next episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Take care, everybody.